So we're really excited to have our panel today, Susan Cada, Vickie Labranche, and Daniel Deleary from Council Fire, Miziwe Biikand, and the Aboriginal Apprenticeship Board of Ontario. I'm just gonna have Vickie just talk a little bit, just to give if you guys can just do a little introduction. About yourself and your work and how you just a little bio, a little bit about yourself. Vickie, let's start with you.
Yeah. So I'm the Special Projects Manager at Miziwe Biikand Aboriginal Employment and Training. I have been with the organization for 13 years now. I have done various positions within Miziwe Biikand, so I have a good mix of our different funding, our different programs, that sort of thing. I actually just graduated in February with my bachelor's of business administration, which I'm happy to say. And that's about it for me.
Congratulations, Vickie. Daniel.
All right. So like I said, my name is Daniel Deleary. I've been working in the employment and training field for, I believe, about 8 years now. And I came into it, I was picked up by a number of communities in Southwestern Ontario to become a regional apprenticeship coordinator. And at that time, I knew nothing about apprenticeships or the system. And so since that time, have really come to do a lot of research, a lot of understanding, and continual learning with regards to the apprenticeship system in Ontario, and becoming the supportive person and supportive individual for our Indigenous communities to reach out to and to be able to provide any types of supports that I can or information. So that's really the work that we do at the Aboriginal Apprenticeship Board of Ontario, is connecting communities to partners for opportunities and careers for Indigenous peoples, but then also we're here for information to help our communities navigate the skilled trades industry. And so so I've been in it for about 8 years now. I look young. Just kidding. I keep looking at my hair because this is my COVID hair, and my hair is like it's pretty frizzy. So and there's not much. I don't know what to do with it. So I'm just kind of always like, just comb it and let it be, I guess. So I just keep looking at my hair. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah, but congratulations, Vickie. That's great news on the bachelor's there. Back to you, Brandon.
I was on mute. Okay, yeah, you guys kind of touched on it just now, but can you kind of go a bit more deeper into your programs and the work that you guys are doing?
I'll start. I guess we'll just flip back and forth.
Sorry, Danny, start ahead.
Yeah. So with the Aboriginal Apprenticeship Board of Ontario, our organization formed. It was kind of a soft form because really our organization started from Indigenous communities, employment and training programs in Indigenous communities, whether it be on reserve, off reserve, Métis communities, Inuit communities, discussed the need to have a body that became like a communication tool, a link to industry, and that industry would also have a link to Indigenous communities. And so that there was always somebody that industry could reach out to help in supporting them to connect to Indigenous communities, and vice versa, where Indigenous communities and employment and training programs could reach out to industry, and that we would have a body that would help in that process, right? And to create a link. And so really that has been our mandate. So it was a soft start, and I think it was, the discussion started about 10 years, probably at least 10 years ago, and probably much the same way as Toronto Community Benefits, TCBN, kind of started, kind of a grassroots movement. And so since that time, we have operated without any core government funding. So we are a not-for-profit organization without any core government funding. We rely on generous support of our partners, both the Indigenous community partners, employment and training programs, as well as our industry partners, to help keep us afloat and keep us going in the work that we're doing. So we're always striving to ensure that we're serving our Indigenous communities, our Indigenous skills, employment and training programs, what's known as ISET-P holders. We're always striving to ensure that we provide quality service to them, that we remain viable, and also to our industry partners, that they see the benefit of working with us and connecting them to Indigenous communities and providing them the services and the capacity to do that in a meaningful way, right? Because I think that's the biggest thing, is connecting to Indigenous communities in a meaningful way, rather than just saying, oh, well, we have to provide you jobs, so, here's some jobs, right? That it's more than that, that it's about helping, and looking at the benefit and support of supporting Indigenous communities. So we work throughout Ontario, and now we've expanded most recently. My colleague here, co-worker Val, is on the call as well, Valerie Vanderwick. And so we now take care of 4 other provinces. So that's BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick. And when I say take care of, I mean support. So we are a support tool, and really is what we do. And just making sure that there's valued connection and communication happening between the skilled trades industry here in Canada and Indigenous communities. And one of the ways that we do that is we do that by what we call link steering committees. And really, it's just a table. It's a table that we have throughout the province. We have numerous tables throughout the province. And we have our industry partners at the table. We have our Indigenous skills, employment, and training programs at the table. And we have a discussion, we talk about what's happening, what's going to be happening, where are the opportunities, and where might we see opportunities for Indigenous communities and Indigenous peoples. And it's there's no magic wand or anything like that. It's just, but that table becomes, magic in and of itself, because those opportunities start coming, those partnerships start getting discussed, those training opportunities start getting discussed, and all of a sudden, we have people who are gaining meaningful careers in the skilled trades. So that's the work that we do. We just, in a nutshell, we're a communication tool. We're a link, and we just try to be supportive to our Indigenous communities as well as the construction industry. Miigwech.
And Vickie?
Yes, so Miziwe Biikand services the Indigenous community within the GTA. We're located at Gerrard and Jarvis, right downtown, right across from Allen Gardens. When you walk into our doors, you're right away walking into our Employment Ontario office. So we have employment counselors, a job developer. They meet with clients one-on-one. We go through a variety of employment services to really get a client either employed or into training programs. If they are looking for any other needs that we're not able to service them with, we'll definitely refer them off to an organization that is able to assist them with, being Indigenous or non-Indigenous. We have around 1,200 clients that come through our doors every month. So we do a variety of different things with them. Some of them could be just coming to meet with an employment counselor. Some of them have programming. Some of them may just be coming in to use the computers or fax machine in the ERC, which is our Employment Resource Center. And then my department is the trades department. So we have a variety of different programs that we do. Our main program that we do every year is our carpentry pre-apprenticeship program. We partner with George Brown College. It's a 27-week program. We start with academic upgrading, some life skills training. The client also gets certified in first aid, WMIS, working at heights, all the certificates you would need to go on any job site. And then they will go on to George Brown College for carpentry and 2 weeks of drywall. After that, they will come back to Miziwe Biikand. We'll touch up on their resume, their interviewing skills, get them sent out to a variety of different employers and get them on an employment placement for 8 weeks. A lot of the times after they complete their placement, that employer will hire them. So that is a big program. We have had that program since 2007. We also partner with Skilled Trades College in Vaughan. So they have 3 programs that we send clients to. They have the electrical program, the plumbing, and intro to home renovations. They're all 12-week programs. They really have a wraparound service where they really work with the client on the skills needed to be in that industry. They also ensure that the client gets hired afterwards. So a lot of our clients do enjoy that, and we're able to send clients one-on-one there. Another program that we usually do in the fall is the construction craft worker program with Local 183 Training Center out in Kleinburg. We usually have youth who are really interested in that, and that's an 8-week program where they do a variety of different skills for the construction trades. More recently, we have been doing new innovative ideas where we are doing like software testing programs, web development programs, really just trying to get a variety of clients into different employment fields, just because we are seeing that there is a trend to more computer-based employment. So we are taking that into consideration as well. Thank you.
Awesome. How did you guys get into the work that you're doing right now? What were you doing before this, before your particular organization? Yeah, just give us a bit of history on how Vickie and Danny got here. Danny, let's start with you.
So what was I doing before this? I held a number of different positions in First Nation communities. I think when I first graduated from university, I was working with education. I was a cultural coordinator for an Indigenous Education Coalition, which is a second level service provider. And so I was their cultural kind of like advisor, coordinator, developing cultural programming for First Nation schools. And then when I went from there, I was an environment director or environment manager for Chippewa of the Thames First Nation. And then I seen this opportunity come up for this regional apprenticeship position. And like I said before, I didn't really know too much about apprenticeship. I interview really well. And I did my research and I did my studying before the interview. And I began to learn about the ISET-P program and the Indigenous Skills Employment and Training Program. Back then it was known as ASETS, Aboriginal Skills Employment and Training Agreement, or strategy. And I, and for me, it's not really about, it doesn't really matter what I'm doing. My goal and my passion in life has always been to, use my skills and my abilities to make a difference in our Indigenous communities. So it hasn't really mattered what I'm doing or where I'm doing it, as long as I feel as though I'm making a difference in Indigenous communities and helping Indigenous people, then I feel satisfied kind of in my life work. And I really enjoy this field. I really enjoy the employment and training field, as I've been in it for 8 years now. Because just even that one person that you get into a successful career and then you see them, new truck and just, at least they're financially stable in life, they're not fighting poverty. It's not the end all be all to health and well-being, but, if you can ensure that somebody has food on the table and you help to be a part of that, there's something really meaningful about that. And so I really enjoy being a part of the employment and training field and helping people to enter careers for that reason. Miigwech.
And Vickie?
Yeah, so I relocated to Toronto in 2006. I was living in North Bay prior to that, going to school. When I came here, I was an office manager at a small jewelry company. I didn't really know the services or the Indigenous community. I always wanted to work with the Indigenous community. But then I got the email where they were looking for a project officer at Miziwe Biikand. So I applied, I got the position, and that's been 13 years now that I've been with Miziwe Biikand. Love working for the Indigenous community. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So in terms of catchment area that you guys cover, yeah, like what's the area both you guys cover? Starting with you, Vickie.
So we do all of the GTA. We go as far as Oshawa, Pickering. We service Mississauga, Brampton, Oakville. There's like a big circular area that we're able to do. It's pretty big.
Okay. Is there any challenges with that, Vickie, in terms of, or what do you find challenging in terms of that, like covering that catchment?
More for the clients who say live in Pickering and our program is located downtown.
Mm-hmm.
The commute for them to get in every day is a lot. And a lot of times they're doing GO train, subway, even walking. And that can be exhausting when they have to start their placement or start school at like 7:30. It's like they're waking up at like 4:30, leaving the door at like 5 just to make it in on time. So that's one of our biggest obstacles, is just kind of trying to make that barrier a little bit more easy. But there is no real easy way to do that. All we're able to do is really give the client the transportation supports.
Yeah. And Danny?
So my catchment area is all of Ontario. So actually, maybe, can I share my screen real quick? Oh, no, maybe not. Okay. So my catchment area is all of Ontario.
Hold on. Do you want to share your screen? I stopped.
Yeah, I can just show a map.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I just stopped my. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So if you can see this, can you see my screen up now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my kind of catchment area. So all of Ontario. And like I was mentioning before, we have 7 linked steering committees. We're actually going to be expanding that. I won't get into that right now. And so we have all of Ontario covered, and every portion of Ontario is covered by a link. And so what we did is we kind of broke that up based on the employment, Indigenous skills, employment and training programs, and the programs that are operating in various regions. And so we kind of just broke up Ontario that way and said, okay, well, here's the areas that we're going to focus on. So I manage link steering committees, 7 of them currently throughout Ontario. And that's, we try to host quarterly meetings. And again, that's where we bring together the industry partners, unions, contractors, as well as the Indigenous skills, employment and training programs. And we just have those discussions about, how can we foster and develop some opportunities and partnerships here. And maybe just to answer the question you asked of Vickie about challenges, many of the times we don't have a lot of capacity, right? The programs themselves, they have very stringent guidelines about funding and about, and so we know that there's some very creative things that we can do sometimes. And at the tables, at our link steering committees, we talk about, all these creative things that we could do. However, there's not anybody within those organizations to do it. And there's only one of me. And so you get kind of stretched because you see all of these great opportunities and all these things that we could do in each one of these regions across the province. However, there's just nobody to take that ball and continue to move it forward there. Because again, there's only one of me trying to support these communities and their initiatives and their endeavors. And so that's one of the biggest challenges that I see, is because if there was one of me in each one of these regions in Ontario, I think we could see some real beneficial changes and beneficial programs and projects and initiatives happening, right? Because you would have somebody on the ground, just doing the work that I do in one particular region of the province. So that is a big challenge that I face, because I was just trying to support these communities in the best way I can, to ensure that I'm even adequately sharing myself to each one of the regions, right, in my time. So that's a big struggle. So we need more. So if there's any funders out there, we need some more people like me. just throwing it out there, just in case. All right, Miigwech.
Okay, appreciate that. Have any of you worked in construction before? If so, what did you do?
Myself, no.
No. Sometimes what's crazy is my wife is actually a little bit more handy than I am around the house. You know, I take pride. I never was in construction, and I always say to people, because that comes up quite a bit, right? Like, were you in construction? And I say no, I wasn't. But that was never offered to me as an opportunity. It was never offered to me as an option in high school. Elementary school, high school. The skilled trades were not talked about as a potential option. You went and you did your design and tech class, because you had to do it as a credit in high school. But nobody ever said, hey, you know what? There's great careers out here. There's great opportunity for skilled tradespeople. Have you ever thought about becoming a skilled tradesperson, right? And I think that's, it speaks to a larger problem that's occurring, right, within the education system, to begin encouraging young people and youth, towards these viable careers, right? Yeah.
Danny, are you seeing this? Is this an issue that you're seeing across Ontario in terms of schools being defunded and not necessarily streamlining and getting folks into the trades?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's a huge problem. I went to a school in London, Ontario, HBBL secondary school. Before that, it was known as a technical academy. So the school had, there was automotive labs, there was welding labs and plumbing labs and all of these things, right? However, because there was a movement, there was a shift towards getting away from, these technical academies, they began taking this out of the school, right? Taking those things out of the school, and they, so there's been a defunding of academic or technical skill sets and training within the post or secondary system, and I think that's a real shame. And I think that the other part to that is that within the education system, the people are pushed towards the post-secondary, right, fields, and the colleges are good for some skill sets and getting some skilled trades learning, but at the same time, we know that if people want viable careers and they want to be out in 20-25 years with retirement, then skilled trades are definitely the way to go, right? And there's not enough skilled trades people, so we should be pushing for more people to enter the skilled trades. Yeah, it's definitely a big issue I see with the education system currently.
And Vickie, if you can add on to that, for the majority of I'm not saying the majority, like for folks who come in, how many people's in a cohort, give or take, for, let's say, your carpentry program?
I look to bring in 20 to 25 clients, just because retention's never 100%.
Yeah.
I'm looking to have a finishing class of at least 10 to 12 clients, just because then I'm able to match them up with employers who have reached out to me. And then it's just really working with them on the various barriers that they're coming into the program with. Some of them are homeless or living in shelters. Some of them don't have any supplies or materials or any tools. So we provide them with startup to get clothing, to get tools. We provide them with tools. It's just really working with them one-on-one and seeing how we can support them, and then trying to make the learning process that much easier. Just because navigating the apprenticeship roadmap is challenging.
Yeah. When you say out of that 20 to 25, how
Mhm.
many of those folks would you say are complete novices to the construction trade?
I would say 90% of them.
Okay. So when they're in the program, they're getting it's really a career or exploration to see what, if they're fit for it, or where they want to go essentially. Yes.
Absolutely. And like before we partnered with Dixon Hall, the Mill Center. So we were able to give the clients before they went on to George Brown the hands-on experience to work with the different machinery, to build things, to see if they're really wanting to get into that career path.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, now we don't have access to that space.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm happy to say that in a few years, Miziwe Biikand will have our own training center and we will have a carpentry workshop. So I think that can definitely make a difference on retention and program expansion and that sort of thing.
That's awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Um, I used to when I used to work at Building Up. We used to go take our participants over to Dixon, the Mill Center, and we met Bill. And actually, a couple of times I met some Miziwe Biikand participants, and those guys are on it, And Bill was a very interesting character, but he passed away recently.
What, really?
Yeah, he passed away. So that was like, well, not recently,
Oh,
it was
wow.
last year. So it was really tough for a lot of folks. He was really impactful on a lot of the guys who came through our program.
Absolutely.
Um, what are you kind of touched on it, Vickie, but what are some of the challenges or barriers for Indigenous people, not just to get into, but to actually stay into the construction sector and reach the journey person status? Let's start with you, Vickie, and then Danny, if you can follow up.
A lot of the times we don't have the connections with employers or the right contacts to um, have our clients have that leg up like other folks may have. A lot of the times, certain industries are predominantly, largely family oriented. They get their cousins in there, their brothers, their nephews, that sort of thing. So we're really trying to be that voice for our client that they're able to do the apprenticeship or they're able to do the work placement. We're really trying to give them that confidence that they're able to do it, that we're their support system. If there's anything that they're needing or any challenges, we'll definitely listen and we'll be that advocacy in their corner.
And Danny?
Yeah, I totally agree with Vickie's point. Maybe just to add, the intolerance and the racism is always prevalent at different times, and so unfortunately, we have to prepare our members just as any other community of people of color. We have to prepare our members to say, this is what you might experience, right? These are the things that you might experience, and unfortunately that's the case, because just like our session last night, we're trying to get out there and to educate and to build awareness and to lessen the degree of intolerance. I learned a valuable lesson a long time ago. My parents said, not everyone's racist. It's that they are intolerant. They're intolerant to, maybe it's the color of your skin or the beads you wear around your neck or your hair color or the way that you look. They're intolerant to that. They're intolerant to the idea of your people. And so I use the word intolerant quite a bit. And so we prepare our members, for knowing that they might come across that Joe who feels that he has the God-given right to list off every single problem that he sees with the Indigenous community. Or they might run across that Joe that lists off every problem he believes is wrong with the Black community. And so we prepare our members, as best we can to face that adversity on the job site, and just give them the heads up that this is what you might face, but have the adversity to get through it. know that we're here to support you, know that there's others that are there to support you. And here are the steps that you should know to take, that when you're on the job site, that no one has the right to say those things to you, and that you need to report those things, and that you need to find a safe space and build those relationships and partnerships with people who you work with and your managers to ensure that you feel safe in reporting those things, right? And and so we prepare them that way, because I think that's one of the biggest things is we can get them in, right? And can you get them to stay there, right? And we know that there's all of those barriers that are within that career path that might inhibit them from staying within that career path, right? And so we try to prepare them as best as possible. And Vickie's out there, on the streets and working from the community side, to be that supportive tool, to be that supportive person that they can come back to and say, hey, I had this happen on the job site. What should I do? What should I do? And so we have, Vickie is there, but we have, there are many community people, and I think with the TCBN, I think it's just, what's impressive is that we're just building a stronger network, right? We're building a stronger network and a connection to ensure that all people of color know that there's a support mechanism out there for them in their chosen career path.
And there's something you said just now that was interesting, Danny, and is around us preparing our members, and it made me think. There's with again, came up last night, but with a lot of violence going on right now, like a lot of anti-Black racism violence going on right now that we're seeing across North America. It reminds me, in terms of, as a father of 3 Black sons, it reminds me of the preparation of these conversations that I have to have at home with my sons, that are not necessarily like my friends who are white, who have children. They have, not to oversimplify it, but they have the birds and the bees conversation. And I have to have the birds and the bees conversation, but I also have to have the conversation of how to navigate if you're stopped by police. When this question that can you talk about the importance of groups or agencies such as Miziwe Biikand or AABO to talk about preparing, or just other Indigenous programs, having, being able to talk to your participants about these other factors and more of a holistic approach versus a traditional pre-apprenticeship program or pre-apprenticeship program. Let's start with you, Danny, and then Vickie.
So I think one of the things that we do from AABO's perspective, because we're just trying to support our partners, right? And our partners are our employment and training program holders and our industry partners. And so we host conferences every year. And at those conferences, like our last conference in November, we had Raven, who's on the call today with us. And she was at our last conference and presented and talked about being, an Indigenous female working within the skilled trades industry, and talked about her experience and the things that she faced and how she got through them, and the ways that she got through them. And so what we hope to do by that is we hope to give that information to our partners, to say, look, this is how an Indigenous woman got through it. This is her story. Now use this to help your clients. Use this story to say, hey, this is how someone else I know got through it, right? This is what they did. And so that's how we try to navigate that, as well as, we try to provide as much information as possible, with regards to our regular meetings, to give them information to say, make sure you're acknowledging these things with your clients, right? The other thing that we do is we do the Indigenous cultural competency training, right? And to date, we've probably trained, we work with unions quite a bit, and because unions have always been very receptive to us, the construction skilled trades unions, the building trades unions, and they've been very receptive at saying, yes, we want to engage the Indigenous communities. And so I can say with all honesty, I've trained almost every single manager, business manager, business rep for the laborers union here in Ontario, and now moving across Canada. I've trained, some of our largest contractors, some of their managers and site managers. And so, the more and more I think we do that, the greater the message gets out there to, hey, there's things happening on your job site, regardless if you have it in policy that, you cannot say these things, it's potentially happening. So how are you addressing it? How are you addressing it as a union? How are you addressing it as a manager to ensure that people of color are not discriminated against on the job site, right? And I think that's the work of AABO, is we're trying to, on a broad range, trying to get that message out there in that education, because that's kind of the work we do, is always kind of at that, broad range, right? Miigwech.
So just to add on to what Danny said, for our carpentry program, we do employment placements. So when we send out our clients to the placements, we always do like a buddy system. We like to send them to an employer. So then it kind of eliminates some of those barriers or racism, things that can happen. Not saying it's foolproof, but it does help.
Yeah, you're on mute, Brandon.
Hey, thanks. I asked the question. It's pretty fluid. Okay. What are two pieces of advice you would give to someone who is Indigenous and wants to get into the trades? Starting with Vickie.
That they're able to do any career path within the trade sector. There are supports out there. There's organizations out there. There is different channels that they're able to go into. All the unions are wanting to bring on Indigenous individuals. So the opportunities are there, and they just need to follow through on it, basically.
Danny?
I have three things. And they're just real short, because there were three things that were taught to me when I came into the employment and training field. And the construction industry said to me, they said, if they can follow these three things, then they'll be employable for the rest of their life in the skilled trades. They said, show up on time, and give a hard day's work. Right? Give an honest day's work. And those are the three things that I talk to our members about. I said, because sometimes they don't feel as though they're smart enough or they're capable enough. And I think maybe all of us have felt that at different times in our lives. We felt maybe we're not the best. We're not smart enough. We're not able to. And I say it to anybody, I said, no, you're just as Vickie has said, you are able to, right? You are able to. And all they're asking you to do is show up on time and give an honest day's work. And you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the best carpenter. You don't have to be the best welder. You don't have to know what you're doing when they get on the job site, because they said, you know what, as long as you show up and you're willing to learn and you're willing to show the effort, then you will be employable. And that union or that contractor will continue to hire you, right? Because they see that strong work ethic the desire to want to work, and the desire to want to earn that paycheck, right? And those are the three things that I've always said, when working with our Indigenous peoples and anyone with regards to the skilled trades, is those kind of three pieces. And I know it's not the end all be all, because I know there's when we talk about all those other barriers and things that are happening, but I think that most people can agree that that's those are three principles that if you can find the way to do that as a young person or as anybody entering into the skilled trades workforce, if you can follow those three, right, you will be employable. And there's no, exactly, as Vickie said, don't ever think that you're limited to just being a carpenter, or, that all of those, what they call technical skill trades, millwrighting and, electrical, those are all available for anybody. And again, those supports are out there. So I agree 100% with that.
I would like to welcome Susan. Susan, can you hear me? Can't hear you. Did you do a mic check?
There you go.
Hey, Susan, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're just gonna throw you right into. So we got Susan from Toronto Council Fire. Can you just talk a little bit about the work that you guys do, just to catch people up? The work that you guys do when you roll there.
Okay, so at Council Fire, I'm the Apatisiwin worker. It's a new program to Council Fire. So basically, I help people find training. Oh my gosh, I'm very nervous. Sorry.
It's okay.
My stomach is just like yeah. But so yeah, people will come into the center, and if they're looking for training, if they're looking for employment, stuff like that, they will come and see me, or sometimes they're referred. So I'll sit down with them, have a short little interview, kind of see what they're looking for, what their goal paths are, and then figure out where best to help them. So sometimes they'll need training, training supports, which means like actually paying for tuition and stuff like that. Or they might not even know what training opportunities are out there. So I help them with that. Or if they're going into employment, they've just found a job, so they need help. Maybe they need money for a work uniform, stuff like that. We can help with that too. Another part of the stuff we do is pre-career development, and that is a new part of the program where we can actually offer stuff like language and cultural awareness, which is really good because that's really needed.
Awesome. So Danny and Vickie just gave a couple of advice. So do you have like 2 pieces of advice that you would give to someone who is Indigenous, who wants to get into construction or the trades?
I'm new to the position right now. I've just started about October of last year. So the people I've been seeing, I have been looking more for training in that. But anybody who wants to, I know that some people have gotten jobs through construction just by actually going to a construction site and just asking, which is okay, which is good. But if people need training, they can always come in, ask around, ask people you know, say, hey, somebody you know that works in construction, ask them, that's always good. If not, you can always check on the internet or just come by a center and ask for info.
Where's your center located?
We're at Toronto Council Fire, so we're downtown in the Regent Park area. We're at the corner of Dundas and Parliament.
Okay, awesome.
Blue building on the corner.
And are you seeing more women going into your programs? Let's start with Vickie, Danny, and then end with Susan.
With the carpentry program, we are. Our program this year had 15 clients who started, and 4 of them were female. The percentage is pretty high. Our construction trades program with LIUNA, I haven't had a female participant in that program as of yet. And our Intro to Home Renovations program that we partner with Skilled Trades College, we have had 1 woman graduate from the Intro to Home Renovations program. Thanks.
Across the province, I have seen a large uptake of Indigenous women entering into skilled trades training programs. In many cases, there actually has been skilled trades training programs directly geared towards women. So I know that in North Bay at Canadore College, they hosted a all-women construction carpentry renovation program. I believe they had graduated 12 women from that program. I know that the LIUNA CCW program hosted an all-women cohort in Thunder Bay, all Indigenous women. but I think they opened it up to all women. So I think we're beginning to see that uptake of women in the skilled trades, and I think we're seeing more and more. Just like with Raven, a prime example. There's one of our role models, right? Somebody who has been working in the field, and they see that that success breeds further success, and that other young Indigenous women see that and they say, hey, if she can do it, I can do it too, right? And so it's happening, right? Whereas when I started in this field 8 years ago, I believe we knew of only a handful of Indigenous women across the province who were apprentices. Now we're probably, hopefully we're nearing 100, if not more, right? So it's happening.
Awesome. And Susan?
Right now, I've had some people, a few women come in and ask about trades programs, just because we've had like posters up with other colleges promoting trades programs. So far, I haven't had anybody actually come and say that, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to go into trades. But hopefully we have more women coming through the program. And it's good to see that there are programs out there that are just for women and tailored to Indigenous women. And hopefully we can get something happening closer.
Go ahead, Danny.
Well, I just wanted to I just want to mention one thing, and I think it's important for everybody to know is that the pre-apprenticeship programs and dollars that flow from the ministry, all of those dollars are actually geared towards minorities, right? So for the college programs that are run, pre-apprenticeship programs, the unions, the stipulation for that funding is that those dollars be used towards minority groups, right? So that's women, that's visible minorities. I don't know if you say invisible minorities, but visible minorities. I don't know why we say visible minorities, but women, youth, that those dollars are actually geared towards that. So, for anybody out there that's looking at these pre-apprenticeship programs, they should strongly consider and know that, that those programs have been made available for, let's just say people of color, right? Minorities and minority groups in the province who aren't typically represented within the skilled trades industry. Just want to mention that because I think it's important for people to know that that's a priority focus for those programs.
Appreciate that. Have any of you faced discrimination in your work before? Starting with Susan.
Actually, in my work at Council Fire, no, I haven't. It's a tough question. It's a very personal question. I have been discriminated against. I've had comments made, but that's just like in general stuff, like stores, stuff like that, but not at my current workplace, no.
Not your current. It doesn't have to be in your current workplace, but just in any work experience that you've had.
When I think about it, at the time you think you hear like offhand comments and you just it doesn't really register. And it's not until later you go back and you're like, hey, that really wasn't that nice. And then you realize that, yeah, so things have happened, but I can't tell you exactly, like give you a pinpoint right now, but yeah.
Okay, Vickie or Danny?
I haven't faced any discrimination in the workplace. So yeah, sorry.
No.
I can't say that with regards to my what do you call it? My skin color, my nationality. But I actually, what was interesting, because when I seen this question up, I believe I faced it in different ways working even within the First Nation. Because when you work within a First Nation, like the actual community, many times our communities are run by women. They make up, typically they are the bulk of employees within the administration and running the community, which is a good thing. I think it's a great thing. But being a young man and being, a very strong and confident individual, I had run into a number of situations where, just based on gender, I was actually othered, right, within the workplace, which is kind of opposite, right? Because typically it's men being the ones who perpetuate that, but in the workplace I was othered because I was a very confident young man working in a predominantly female-dominated industry in our communities. And how that happened was I felt as though they would hold me back from things, right? They would hold me back. They would limit my ability within a workspace. And I really believe it was just based on, they didn't know how to deal with me as a young, confident young man, right, within their realm, within their industry. And so it took some adjusting for them. Not that it wasn't bad, but there was not, but it was interesting, and it's still interesting to me, because it was a discrimination, not, in your face, nasty, but it was, there was some of it there, right? Definitely. Miigwech.
Has any of your participants in any of your programs faced discrimination or complained to you, or that they faced discrimination, whether, they've left your program and went to a union or on a job site or anything like that? And how do you respond to them?
Okay, maybe I'll start then. Yeah, I've had a couple of individuals over the years come to me and say, that they've experienced this, experienced that. Unfortunately, most of the time, because I'm not a direct service provider, so it was typically later on, right? So I would ask them, how did you deal with it, right? And and so they would talk about the, kind of sometimes the typical route of going to the managers, talking to their managers. But I have heard, I've heard some horror stories out there with regards to even that, right? Where they went and tried to complain to the manager, and the manager ended up perpetuating the discrimination. And so, that's where I always say, well, that's where our organizations can help. That's where our organizations can step in. Can be that supportive body, right? That supportive tool. But I haven't had to deal with anybody in a real time circumstance. So maybe Vickie or Susan have, though, and they can talk about it.
I'm going to just echo to what Danny was saying. If any challenges were to come with one of our clients in their workplace, I always tell them to go see their direct supervisor. But like he said, I haven't had any scenario like that, which I'm thankful for.
Also the same thing. I haven't had that happen, like somebody come directly and say that this has happened. I've had a client who said previously, before in other jobs, that the work experience wasn't pleasant. And what they did was they had gone to their boss. A similar situation like Danny was saying was they had tried to go through the proper channels, like through the boss first, through the manager, and that. And then when that didn't work, they actually went through like human rights, actually stepped it up, which is good. Kudos to them, because they knew that those avenues were in place and that they could follow them. So as a center, as an agency, as a program, what I want to do is also make sure that our clients know, or that these their rights are there, and give programs and like seminars, webinars, to let them know what their rights are, so that when these things do happen, that they know that they can use their voice and stand up for themselves.
Okay. What are two things challenging about the work that you do? Starting with you, Susan.
Well, the first challenge is that this is totally new to me in my capacity as a Apatisiwin worker, working with definitely trades and construction in that. Like I mentioned before, I've just started in this position in October. Previously, I was a prenatal worker at Council Fire, and I was also a Microsoft instructor. So I've had different capacities at the center. So it's always challenging when you move, but with those come rewards too. So, oh my gosh, I kind of forgot the question.
So what are two things challenging about the work that you do?
Just being new, definitely, that's one of them. And right now, just connecting with people, because before it was easier because you could go out, you could go to workplaces, you can talk to people face to face, but now everything is just kind of online and you don't see the person, so that connection's not there. That person to person, which a lot of people are missing. So, but that right now, that's been my two challenges.
Okay, thank you. Vickie and Danny?
Two challenges that one would be retention. I would like to increase it amongst the participants who jump into the different programs that we do. We try to provide them with all the supports to try to eliminate their barriers. However, sometimes it's beyond our control. So that is one challenge that we do face. Another thing would be increasing our contacts for individuals who are looking to jump into apprenticeships or working with journeymen, is finding that right linkage. So that's another challenge that we face.
So when you say linkage, you mean in terms of like mentorship, you mean, or what exactly are you talking about?
It's just finding an employer to take them on
Employer.
as an
Okay.
apprentice.
I see.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up, in terms of, you said retention, what are some of the issues you're finding in terms of like the consistent issues around retention that you're finding with the participants over the years at Miziwe Biikand?
For the most part, the supports we do give really do help them and allow them to complete the program. However, there are certain occasions where even though clients are given the supports, they essentially like fall off the planet. They won't return your calls or your emails. They remove themselves from the program. So it's really eliminating that or getting the feedback to know what happened there. A lot of the times they could be relocating back home. We don't really know the scenario. So that's a challenge.
Thank you. And Danny?
Challenge, I like to say that, yeah, like, because I'm not feet on the ground, you know, and I get a lot of people reaching out at different times, and you know, my strategy is typically to, you know, connect them with the appropriate ISET-P holder, Indigenous Skills Employment and Training program holder. And, you know, but I think that's because sometimes, you know, I want to have feet on the ground. Sometimes, you know, those opportunities come across my desk, and, you know, I get a union or a contractor and saying, okay, well, I got 20 positions over here that I need to fill today, you know, or I need to fill yesterday. And because I'm not feet on the ground, you know, sometimes it makes it really difficult to find those individuals, you know, for that opportunity. And so sometimes, you know, we miss out. And sometimes that makes it really challenging, you know, in our partnership and in our relationship to the industry too, because, you know, if you look at our signage and we say, well, we have the Indigenous supply to meet industry demand, right? And we have lots of Indigenous people out there, but, you know, it's the work that Vickie's doing, it's the work that Susan's doing to help in readying, right? Help in readying our Indigenous peoples for those opportunities. And so that's where, you know, I'd say really we're still at a place of just readying our people for those opportunities, right? And yeah, and then I have to agree with Susan. I think she mentioned this. She said, you know, that face-to-face contact right now is very difficult, because we know that the construction industry is a face-to-face. It's a handshake industry. It's a name industry. It's, you know, and so it makes it difficult to make those connections, to make those discussions happen when you don't have the ability to be face to face, right? And that is a challenge for sure.
What are two things you love about the work that you do? Starting with you, Danny, and then Vickie, and then Susan.
You know, I think I mentioned it when I first started. I love the fact that I can look back over the 8 years, and I know that I had a hand in supporting somebody or people into viable careers, and now I see them. They're making more money than I am, and that's a good thing. It's a great thing, and I love that. I love the fact that I know that their family is well, that they're well financially, and I just love that. And I love being able to. I love meeting people. I love being a part of these discussions. I love talking about possibilities and hope and and aspirations. And I think that these discussions that we have when we talk about employment and training and getting people ready for careers is all about hope. It's all about aspiration, and I love that. Right, I love that type of discussion. Building people up and helping and supporting them, and helping them help themselves. So that's what I love.
Two things that I love. One would be being a ripple within our client's career path or employment path. Really just seeing them grow, seeing them given the opportunity to either being employed in that dream job of theirs, or going on to school, or becoming a post-secondary student as they have always aspired to be. Another thing would be is that I work for the Indigenous community, providing our clients with the voice or the opportunities to make their lives better, to give them livelihoods that they enjoy doing. I think it's rewarding that they are given the opportunity to have a job that they love going to every day. Thank you.
What I love about my job, you guys kind of covered it all there, but definitely being even a small part of somebody's finding a job, getting that phone call and you hear, I got the job, and you're like, that's awesome, fantastic, because you feel like jumping up and down because it feels like you got that job too. That's one of the parts I love. Even if it's something small, like you help fax that resume for that client, that drop-in client, but they come back later and say, hey, just wanted to let you know, something like that. That's what I love about it. The same thing if they go say, hey, I got accepted into college. Thank you for helping me with tuition. Or you made it so that I was able to feed my children properly or better while I was going to school, right? Stuff like that. Another thing is still being in the Indigenous community, being with people that can relate. We can relate to each other. We have that bond, that commonality, but also learning about other Indigenous people also. I'm a Ojibwe, but also learning about how other nations and their culture, and they have their own ceremonies and stuff like that too, learning that back and forth. So that's what I love about my job.
Thank you. Jumping off Danny's point just now, in terms of, we're in a work, sometimes this work can be thankless. And depending on how you look at it, I'm not putting words in your mouth, first of all. But to that point that sometimes, we could be held, like participants are making, going in construction, someone as a journey person are making like a lot of money, right? Over 6 figures or whatever it is. With the knowledge and experience that you have now in terms of when you think about the construction industry, if you could go back to the beginning, would there be anything you would have done differently or change? Would you have decided to go and work in construction, as an example? Starting with Susan, Vickie, and then Danny.
If I could go back, that's always the one question you always get. What would you do if you could go back and change? And for a lot of questions with and stuff, I just like to say really kind of not much really, because I wouldn't be at this point. All those little steps kind of bring you here. But in regards to construction, I've never really worked like formally in construction. I've helped like people I know do demolition because like they flip houses and stuff like that. And that is something I really enjoy doing. It was not as stressful. That's one of the pros I hear about working in construction. It's not as stressful as saying being a teacher where you have all these people that you're interacting with. That's the part I like. But yeah, I probably would have went and looked into the construction trades a bit more and see, if not even for the physical part, but to go on and see the other parts of it, like even like the blueprints and all that stuff, like the more academic part of it. But yeah, I definitely would have looked into it more.
I personally wouldn't last a day in the construction industry. They would literally, it would be my death day. I'm not very good with hands-on stuff. However, with the experience and knowledge I have now, I would say that we need to start trying to hit our clients earlier when they're in high school, just because there is a lot that needs to be touched on at that point. If we can get to them sooner, I think it would make our jobs that much easier. Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of have to side with Vickie on this one because I don't think, even when I talked about earlier, when I said, maybe I would have thought about it, I probably wouldn't have made that good of a skill trades person. I'm very physical and I like to, work my hands. I like to be outside, I cut my own wood and I do a lot of, outdoor things. But like I said, my wife is more skilled than I am. So I don't think I would have made that. They probably would have fired me just because I wouldn't have been any good. Yeah. And then, I think about like, knowing what I know now about the skilled trades industry, and had I known all of what I know now 8 years ago, I would have definitely advocated for some, different types of programming. I would have advocated and I said, but that doesn't work. Let's do this because we know that this will work, right? Because there are some great programs out there that we see working, that are making a difference, that are seeing people engaged in the workforce, in the industry, more so than others. And so I would have advocated, knowing that information now, I would have been advocating for that back then. But yeah, they probably wouldn't have wanted me on a job site. I would have worked hard, but I probably wouldn't have been any good. So yeah.
Is there an importance in having Indigenous mentors who are journey persons to mentor apprentices who are Indigenous?
Maybe I'll start. We'll go back through. I think this is, I think this is critical. It's not going to be make or break. Well, in some cases it will be, right? I think what's important though is that Indigenous people be mentored by people who can understand their situation and have awareness and an understanding and empathy towards it, right? Because you know what, I'll give you a scenario and then I'll give Vickie and Susan a chance to answer. But I'm going to talk about this short little story. There's a union out west, and a friend of mine, he was the business manager. They had asked him, they said, one of his contractors contacted him. He said, can you come and talk to Fred? Because Fred hasn't been showing up. Indigenous man, a First Nation man, has been showing up Monday and Fridays and Mondays. And, being an Indigenous man, a First Nation man, we're kind of thinking he's taking, long weekends. We love him. He's a great worker. We will keep him on, but we don't know how to talk to him about this, right? We don't know how to talk to him about what's happening, and and we kind of assume he's drinking because he's a First Nations man and he's not showing up on Fridays and Mondays. So they asked my friend, who's a business manager of that union at the time, they asked him to go and talk to Fred. And so he goes and talks to Fred, and he says, what's going on? They're kind of concerned about you, and you're not showing up. And Fred says, well, he said, I'm kind of embarrassed to talk about it because I'm a dancer. I'm a powwow dancer, and on Fridays and Mondays, sometimes I miss those days because I'm either going to the powwow or just coming back from the powwow, and so that's the reason that I'm missing. And so it wasn't because he was drinking. It wasn't, and the point to that is just so that if there's an Indigenous mentor there, somebody who understands and appreciates the culture, right, that they won't just automatically assume that the reason Fred is not showing up is because he's an alcoholic, right? And I think that's one of the reasons that it'd be extremely important, right? Understanding of culture. I'll turn it over to Vickie.
I would say it is important. We can provide the clients with an example of what they can potentially be. Somebody who went through the path already, went through all the obstacles, can provide them with feedback on different things that they may encounter or how to overcome certain things. So I do think it's very important.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo the same sentiments. It is very important because, like you were mentioning, the cultural awareness, because sometimes that does come up. That gentleman you were talking about, it was kind of assumed because he was First Nations that he was drinking, which in fact it wasn't. In my mind, when you're telling that story, I was thinking that he would have been out hunting, so that's why he was missing Monday and Friday. But that's because I'm also First Nation, and I have family members who go hunting, and I have family members that are on the powwow trail and that, so I can totally understand and empathize with their story. But if the mentor hadn't been Indigenous, like you said, it could have went a totally different way. But so yeah, it is important to have people that can relate and just kind of know where you're coming from.